Surely most of you are familiar with a situation where you order a bottle of wine in a restaurant or a bar, and a waiter or waitress or a sommelier bring it to you table side, open it in front of you, and offer you that cork to smell and the first little sip of wine to taste before they pour you all your glasses of wine. So why is that done? Don't be under a wrong impression here. This is not done to see if you like that wine or not, or if you want to send it back and choose a different one. Oh no, the bottle is already opened and it's yours. What that process is meant to do is for you to see whether you can smell or taste any wine faults in this bottle that you just ordered or purchased. So wine faults, how do we actually determine if wine is faulted? Let's find out.
First of all, what a sad world would that be if there was no wine? Quite honestly, I have no intention of stopping drinking wine anytime soon. This is for fun only.
First and foremost, wine faults are any undesirable characteristics that can be found in wine caused by different factors such as poor winemaking practices, contamination, storage issues, or even sometimes natural chemical reactions. But regardless of the cause, wine faults really affect our wine's aromas, the flavor, and quality of the wine as well, making it way less desirable and enjoyable, and sometimes even undrinkable. The first wine fault is cork taint, or TCA. And cork taint occurs with contamination of wine by trichloranisol, which is a reaction of mold to some chlorine-based products that are used on corks. And TCA causes some really specific smell to the wine when it's corked that way. So the smell of wet cardboard or some moldy newspaper is what you will smell when that wine fault is present. So commonly you see this in wines that are sealed with cork, not with a screw cap, for example. Wine fault number 2 is oxidation. So this one is unfortunately pretty common, and it's caused by improper closure of the bottle and overexposure to oxygen, essentially. So what this does to our wine, it affects both its smell, taste, and its flavor as well, but you can especially see oxidation on the color of the wine. So our white wines will turn darkish, like brownish color with oxidation, and then the red wines will turn almost like brick color with oxidation. Now, don't confuse this with aging of wine, because when we age white wines, they turn brownish, and when we age our red wines, they turn this brickish color, right? So if you're drinking a relatively young wine and those colors are present, definitely be on high alert for oxidation in that wine. But besides the color, it also just kind of it makes the wine lose its flavor characteristics, so it makes it flat, way less flavorful, and just kind of blah, for the lack of a better explanation here. So oxidation is very common, and it definitely is something that's caused by improper sealing of the wine, some faulty corks where oxygen was able to seep through. The next wine fault is volatile acidity, or VA. And volatile acidity is caused by excessive production of volatile acids that can be caused by either a bacterial contamination or poor hygiene during winemaking process. Regardless of its cause, the first red flag here with VA is usually the smell. So the wine will smell like nail polish, or it will smell like vinegar. So it's a very sharp smell, and definitely, again, caused by something like poor hygiene during winemaking process or fermentation process that just was not monitored very well. The next wine fault is reduction, which is the complete opposite of oxidation as a wine fault. Reduction happens with the lack of oxygen or a complete absence of oxygen during fermentation process and aging process of the wine, which causes sulfur reactions in our wine. And sulfur has very strong smell, as you know, very specific smell to it too. So in case of reduction as a wine fault, our wine will smell like rotten eggs, it will smell like garlic. In mild cases, however, it can be fixed by decanting the wine, so adding that oxygen back into it. We can see a reduction in wines a lot with screw caps, because corks actually allow some oxygen to come through into the wine, where screw caps don't. So reduction is pretty popular among screw caps. The next wine fault is Brettanomyces, or Brett for short. And Brettanomyces is contamination of yeast that can be grown in wine barrels and wine bottles sometimes as well. What's interesting about Brettanomyces is that it can actually add complexity to a wine when it's in moderation. So when it's very slight, it can add that smell of barn or hay or maybe a horse stable to our wine, which doesn't sound very appealing, but actually adds complexity to a wine. But when it's in excess, it's really unpleasant and in your face. Where can we find such wine fault is normally wines from regions of the world that use traditional winemaking techniques. The next wine fault is light strike. And light strike is literally UV damage to our wine. It breaks down some compounds in wine that are just absolutely critical for its taste and its aromas, so it's not a good thing. And the smell that it gives to our wine when it's really faulty due to light strike is a skunky smell. Smells like skunk. It smells like cooked cabbage. So really not good smells for our wines to have. So please keep your wine stored away from the sunlight, from the UV light, to avoid this wine fault of a light strike. Heat damage is our next wine fault. And heat damage we sometimes call cooked wine. Wine is cooked, which is the heat damage, another word for it. But this is usually caused by improper storage or transportation, shipping of a wine when it's exposed to heat or high temperatures for an extended time period. And what it does is usually it affects our taste of wine, so the flavor of it, not so much the color. When it comes to taste for a wine that's been cooked like this, is usually like jammy flavors, very sweet flavors, stewed flavors to a wine, and maybe even caramelized sometimes. Doesn't sound that unappealing, but it actually is quite wrong for our wine to have. So if you have any of those flavors in a wine that's not supposed to be sweet or semi-sweet, that's usually your cooked wine right there, or heat damage. Shipping or storage of wine in hot countries or hot climates is usually what's causing it. The next wine fault is secondary fermentation in a bottle. And now don't get confused here, because secondary fermentation in a bottle is what's used in a traditional method of champagne making and cava making. But if it's actually occurring in a wine that's not supposed to be fermented or fizzy, that's a wine fault. So what happens here is the improper removal of yeast from our wine after the fermentation process. So for all wines except for sparkling wines, yeast is removed if it's not eaten by sugar to convert it into alcohol. The excess of it is removed with a filtration process essentially. So if it's not done properly, some yeast may remain in bottles or in barrels if it's stored in barrels, and then the fermentation continues. So if the bottle of wine is bottled with some yeast still left in it, then it can cause some fizziness. It can create some cloudness to its appearance, so it's not going to be looking clear and beautiful. It's definitely a wine fault for anything that's not meant to be a sparkling wine. The next wine fault is sulfur dioxide. And this one is unfortunately a fault of a winemaker for the most part when it occurs in wine. So what that is sulfur dioxide is a preservative that's used in winemaking. And if it's used in excess by fault, then your wine is faulty due to sulfur dioxide. What can it do to our wine? Really, the smell of your wine will be affected greatly here. So sulfur dioxide will make your wine smell like a match, like a burnt match or burnt rubber. Not a pleasant smell for our wine at all. However, it usually dissipates once you open the wine and let it breathe for a while or even decant it. So there is a solution. but you're gonna have to work for it. The next wine fold is geranium taint. And geranium taint, just like the plant geranium, is caused by the chemical reaction of sorbic acid broken down by the lactic acid in wine. And sorbic acid is just a preservative that's added to wine by a lot of winemakers. So the reaction between those two acids can cause this wine fold. And what it does is make our wine smell like crushed geranium leaves or petals. It's not necessarily the most unpleasant smell, but certainly doesn't belong to our wine. And, you know, hence it's considered a wine fold. The last wine fold is haze or cloudiness. And haze or cloudiness can be caused solely by improper filtration of our wines. So when wines weren't filtered properly, the yeast, the bacteria, the sediment, all can stay in the bottle or in the barrel, wherever that wine is stored, causing it the haziness and the cloudness when the wine is opened and to be consumed. So none of those characteristics are desirable. Haze and cloudiness is not going to be really seen on the aroma or the flavor of the wine, but you can definitely see them in your wine glass when that wine is poured for you. You guys can see how all or most of these wine folds can be addressed or avoided by proper winemaking techniques and practices, proper storage of our wine, and handling of wine during its life cycle. And definitely don't be afraid to speak up if a wine bottle is opened for you by a sommelier or a waiter, and you can see or smell or taste some of these wine folds. You can send that wine back. And if you made it this far in the video, please make sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. And until I see you next time, cheers everyone.